subject. What do you think economics would, if it is a science discipline, what do you think it would have? What does a science subject have? What distinguishes sciences from other disciplines? Anyone? Yeah. Okay, so what happens in analytical thought? How do you get analytical thought? What does it lead to?
Because you derive your
Yes.
you derive your from your observations you derive what to predict other
Yes.
things.
Yes, absolutely. So there is a hypothesis, right? And then there are assumptions, and then there are observations, and based on that, then you find out whether the hypothesis is true or not true. Okay, and then it becomes a theory. So what is a theory? Okay, a theory begins with a hypothesis, right? So in that sense, and in economics, everything begins with a hypothesis. So it has theory in it. Okay, so the law of demand. Now let's look at one example of something which we encounter every day in our lives. Okay, so if you look at you as a human being, as somebody, as a consumer, right? You want to buy something. There's a demand. Okay, and demand is something which is not just a want. It is something which you have money to buy and you want to buy it. Okay, so what do you think it will depend upon? What will it depend upon? Yeah.
And the prices and also the availability of the goods.
Yes, absolutely. It will depend upon the price of the commodity, right? It will depend upon the price. It will also depend upon the price of not just that commodity, but of any substitute commodity, right? It will depend upon any complementary. So petrol and cars, for example, the price of petrol will determine the demand for cars, right? So prices will determine demand. What else? Consumers in what way? The number of, that will be the total aggregate demand, yes, in the country. But one person's demand, I'm saying. Yeah. Yes. Yes, okay. So I would put it as the preferences of the consumer. Does it satisfy the preference of the consumer or not? The taste and preferences of the consumer. Yes. Yeah, the willingness to pay. So that is demand. Demand will always. So that's the difference between want and demand. So when we're talking about demand, demand is when you have the. So which means, okay, so you're right. It is on the income of the person. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. So income is another factor. So what I've done is we've looked at any human behavior and we look at it from an economic point of view, right? And it becomes economics. Now I'll give you an example or a human activity. A human activity of a person going to the temple. It's a simple human activity. Can you look at it from an economic point? A person getting up in the morning going to the temple. Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So say it again. Yeah, just.
When we go to the temple, we actually put some money in the donation box of the temple. And since there's an exchange of money, I think we can call that economy.
Absolutely. So the money that you donate, okay, at the temple, you offer as donation, or you offer make an offering to the idol or to God, then that is money. So there is an economic component. Anything else? Yes.
So one interesting thing is opportunity cost from
Yes.
economics. Like every time you do something, you're giving up on something else, right? So it would be interesting to study if people are making the choice to go to the temple in the
Yes.
morning, what kind of schedule do they have?
Yes.
How much are they willing to give up out of their daily schedules to go to the temple?
Right, absolutely. So that's an opportunity cost. Now, so just put it in a monetary term. And if we're saying economics is all to do with money and financials and all of that. So how would you put this opportunity cost? So the person is spending time to go to the temple, and the opportunity cost is that he's giving up something else, right? In order to go to the temple, the time that he spends going somewhere else, he could have done something to earn money. So we're just giving it an economic implication, right? that time could have translated into earning money, and that money he is giving up in order to go to the temple. So we are looking at that time also as an economic cost. Okay, this is my favorite example when I say that opportunity cost is something so important in our lives, children, because every resource that we have, we can use it in multiple ways. And when we decide to use it in one way, we're giving up on the other way, right? On the other uses of that time, right? Or the resource. And what we give up is the cost of what we are doing, what we're choosing. That's called opportunity cost. And in a layman's term, it's also something called, there is no free lunch. There is no free lunch. That's another saying which actually indicates opportunity cost. You are paying something in order to get something else. Even if you're not paying it through money, but there is a cost involved. There's an implied cost. Okay? So that is what economics is about. It's about looking at every human activity from an economic angle. And that's for a very, very small one person, I'm saying micro. But so micro means one individual, one factory or one business unit, okay? Or one consumer, one supplier. But when you aggregate all of them, it becomes macro. So economics studies the individual, and it also studies the aggregate or the macro, the micro and the macro. Okay? Going back to my example of demand and price, what we then do is that we establish these relationships between variables. One is an independent variable, the other is a dependent variable. We form an equation and we say demand is a function of or depends upon price of the commodity, income of the consumer, taste of the consumer, all the factors that we just now discussed, okay, that we outlined. And then it becomes an equation, so it's a mathematical equation. So that's where maths comes in, right? And then we optimize it and then we get into calculus. We use calculus to derive it, okay? And then we also show this in the form of a graph. Because we say higher the price of the commodity, lower will be the demand. So it's an inverse relationship and we can draw it as a graph. So there is every law in economics, and believe me that all laws in economics, every law can be derived mathematically, it can be shown in a graph, it can be put in the form of words, any form. Okay? So it's very interesting because there is so much reinforcement happening. Somebody tells you something, you can mathematically derive it. You can draw a graph and arrive at the same answer, right? And so it becomes very interesting because all the skill sets that you've learned in science and maths are being used here. And it's making common sense, okay? Coming to another angle of economics, which I never knew till I went into at my master's level. Can you imagine? I mean, this is how I went to one of the best colleges in undergrad economics program, but our teachers never even brought the difference between what is the relationship between micro and macro. Did not even talk to us about how economics is integrated with history and philosophy and sociology. You heard now about socialism, capitalism, right? Karl Marx, okay? All these are actually history, philosophies, right? They're also history, because you study about history of how capitalism carried within itself some seeds of its own destruction. How many of you are fond of reading Ayn Rand? Have you read Ayn Rand book? Ayn Rand? Anyone? You should read that, because at this age, all of you will be able to relate to it. Because she was a kind of a rebel, right? Ayn Rand talks about individualism. I mean, what did she want? Talked about capitalism. So capitalism is very appealing at your age. Okay? Me, myself, what is my good? Why my self-interest will lead to interest of everybody else. Okay? So that's the philosophy. Okay? So what is capitalism? If US is a capitalist economy, what does it mean? If Russia, USSR was a socialist economy, what did that mean? If China is a communist economy, what does that mean? If India till 1991 was a mixed economy with leanings towards, you know what the Russian model was, socialism. And now we're moving towards a free market economy, right, after 91. What does that mean? So all this history, when you study the history of different countries as they evolved and how these different isms, you know, capitalism, socialism, communism, mixed economy, when you understand this, there are pieces, jigsaw pieces which fall into place. And you understand a little bit about what's happening in the world today. Okay? What is globalization and what does it mean? What does it mean when we talk about free trade? Okay? What do we mean by saying that this country specializes in this production of these goods but not in the others? So does it benefit them to make those things which they are good at and export to those which are not good at, and then import the things that you are not specialized in? So is there any benefit of international trade? Right? All this you study in economics. Besides just studying about money and how is money made, how do banks create money, what is the banking system about, so you study about that. So it's a vast, vast subject. It's about development. Okay? When the country is developing, do you want to go the way of capitalism, where you say a few people, a few large corporate houses will grow very fast, okay? And then the benefits of that growth can be then distributed to the people who don't have. So the difference between the haves and the have-nots, is that the way to go? Or is it that when we are growing, we have to take everybody along with us, inclusive growth, growth with social justice? Is that the way we want to grow? Again, it's a debate. So there's a lot of perspective, ideas, opinions, views, backed by facts. Okay? And also a lot of very interesting thing about economics is it's based on many assumptions. So when we say this depends on this, assuming that all other things are constant. So we make lots and lots and lots of assumptions. And oftentimes, when the assumptions are relaxed, okay, those things don't hold. Okay? And therefore you'll find that over a period of time, new theories of economics are coming up. And you can justify them. And which are very, very different and opposite of what somebody else said. Okay? So there's a lot of refutation, and there's a lot of opinions and validation of your assumptions and your beliefs. Okay? So you may have very, very contradictory and very conflicting views. Okay? So if that excites you, then economics is a subject to study. So the area of development economics is very interesting to many people. So those who want to work, for example, in the World Bank or United Nations, then that's another area that economics is opening your doors to. Okay? And then of course coming to commerce side of economics. Okay? So economics is giving you idea about relationship between interest rate, money supply, government fiscal taxation policy, which one should be used when the country is not growing, what is a good method to do? Should we use taxation policy or should we use the monetary policy? A lot of those things. A lot of to do with the world of commerce and banking. That's the commerce side of economics. A little bit about profits. Okay? And very differently defined. So sometimes when you do economics as one part of commerce, you'll find that it contradicts or there's a conflict between what accounts is saying and what economics is saying. I mean, you'll have to understand how to reconcile the two of them. Okay? So, any questions so far as of now? So I've just told you economics is art, science, and commerce. Any questions? It's about, yeah.
So kind of a very silly doubt, but initially you said that when the price of the product is high, it generally reduces the demand. It reduces the number of people who would like to buy it. But ma'am, in the case of our country and maybe many others, when you actually raise the price of a product, whether it is good or not, that comes later. But if you raise the price, people actually tend to feel that the product is premium.
Absolutely.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
so in fact, is there a chance that if the price of the product is raised to a kind of a reasonable amount, then it will actually increase the demand?
Yes,
rather than
absolutely.
reduce it?
Absolutely. That's a very good question, and in fact, one of the questions that comes to mind when we start teaching demand. Yes. So this is the exception to the law of demand. So the law of demand says that higher the price, lower will be your demand. But there are certain goods which are like status symbols. Okay? Where higher the price, higher will be the demand. So these are exceptions to the law of demand, and we studied that too. Okay? And there are also goods which are inferior goods. Okay? For example, poor farmers or people who can't afford to spend too much, so they will buy grains which are, jawar or bajra or something which is cheaper. Okay? But so as the price of bajra increases, if the price of bajra decreases, let's say, okay, then he would buy less of it and not more of it, because now he feels that the consumer feels that he has a better real income, a higher real income, because the prices in the country have fallen down, because this is one of the prices come down, and therefore he feels that his real income has increased, and because his real income has increased, he can now buy a better quality grain. Okay, so those are called giffen goods. So we do these exceptions to every law that we study. There would be exceptions. Like I said, there are assumptions, and you relax the assumptions, and you will find exceptions. Okay, and these are interesting cases to study. Another very interesting example is that we have those when we sit in a car, we have the belt, the safety belt. Okay. And there is, so why do we do that? We want to reduce the number of deaths due to car accident, fatalities due to car accidents, and therefore we have the safety belt. So that is why the government actually has made it a law. But there is a case somebody says that supposing that, everybody starts wearing the belt, people start feeling that they are safer now. Okay, so they start driving more rashly, right? The end result could be that there are more accidents. Even if the number of deaths per accident is less, because somebody is wearing a belt, but because there are more accidents, the total number of deaths may still be more, right? So, so these kind of things are there. So when you look at it mathematically, right, and you start breaking it down, you will find that the end result could be very different from what you intended it to be. So there are unintended effects and something called externalities. So you study those. So there are a lot of interesting case studies that come up when you're studying, and you're looking at every human situation in life, and you can look at it and you can debate it and break it into different parts. Okay?
Without you.
Yeah.
Ma'am, it's not necessarily a doubt. It's like a question, ma'am. I want an answer from your perspective, ma'am. Like you being an economist, I just wanted to know, ma'am, like with the coming in of Mr. Trump as a presidential candidate for the United States, ma'am, how do you think will it boost the capitalist spirit in the American economic policy? Like,
Yeah.
how will it boost? To what magnitude you would like?
I think the US is capitalist. I mean, they, no matter what they say, and they say they're looking at the good of all, but they are all capitalist. And there are big lobbies there, okay? And they would never allow anything other than capitalism to prevail in. And Trump, of course, is at the top of that list. Yeah.